What if paradise had a darker side, one the postcards never show?
ikingurube.
Welcome to Burundi, where behind the beauty of rolling hills lies a buried reality of survival, struggle, and silence. In this travel documentary, we peel back the layers of one of the world's poorest nations, where children trade textbooks for labor, addicts roam forgotten alleyways, and the homeless disappear into shadows. These aren't just facts about countries, they're truths the world chooses to ignore. This isn't just a country documentary, it's a confrontation with injustice. At NVL Travel Documentary, we go beyond borders to reveal what's hidden beneath. Stay with us. What you're about to witness might change the way you see humanity itself. Number 1. Behind the beauty, the harsh reality of Burundi. Burundi. A name many have never heard, yet it holds one of the most heartbreaking stories of our time. This small, landlocked country in East Africa may not make global headlines, but step foot here and reality hits you like a brick wall. Burundi ranks among the top 3 poorest nations on Earth. According to the United Nations Development Program in 2025, over 76% of its population lives below the international poverty line, on less than $1.90 per day. From the moment you arrive, the contrast is blinding. Dirt roads snake between crumbling homes. Children walk barefoot for miles, not to school but to fetch murky water from distant streams. There's barely any infrastructure, no reliable electricity, minimal access to the internet, and health centers that feel more like empty shells than places of healing. But nothing prepares you for the sight that truly defines hunger here. Young boys and girls gathered around the carcass of a dead cow, picking at its remains in hopes of filling their empty stomachs. The stench of decay mixes with dust in the air. It's a smell that clings to your clothes and your memory. And yet, here comes the paradox. Despite this crushing poverty, the people of Burundi radiate something deeply human: hope, in the eyes of a mother cradling her baby under a leaking tin roof, in the laughter of kids playing with soccer balls made of rags, in the resilience of a farmer who greets each sunrise with a prayer for rain. As we journey deeper into Burundi, we'll uncover the systems, stories, and silent struggles that shape life in this forgotten corner of the world. Number 2. Rural life and the suffering of farmers. In the heart of Burundi, life unfolds not in the cities, but in the hills. More than 86% of the population lives in rural areas, clinging to a way of life that feels unchanged for centuries. Their livelihoods depend almost entirely on subsistence farming, growing just enough food to eat, and if they're lucky, a little extra to sell at the local market. But farming in Burundi isn't what you might picture. There are no massive green fields, no shiny tractors, no irrigation systems humming in the background. Instead, there are steep hillsides, crumbling hand tools, and long days under an unforgiving sun. Imagine trying to plow land with nothing but a rusty hoe. And imagine doing it every day without knowing if the rain will come this year. Because here, the weather is not just a forecast, it's a fate. One missed season can mean hunger for an entire village. And with climate change accelerating, the rains are becoming more erratic than ever. Floods drown what little has been planted. Droughts turn soil to dust. For these farmers, every drop of water, or the lack of it, can decide life or death. And then comes the problem of resources. Fertilizers? Too expensive. Most rural families cannot afford even basic supplies, let alone industrial-grade equipment. According to the World Food Programme's 2025 report, less than 20% of Burundi's rural farmers have access to improved farming tools or modern agricultural training. Now, let's talk about terrain, because the land itself fights back. Burundi is not flat. It's a country carved into rolling hills and steep slopes. Large-scale farming? Nearly impossible. Terraces must be dug by hand, soil constantly erodes, and landslides are not a rare event, they're part of life. The geography itself is a challenge no farmer can ignore, And if working the land wasn't hard enough, let's look at what happens after harvest, assuming there is one. No proper roads, especially in the more remote villages, means produce spoils before it can even reach a market. Some farmers carry sacks of beans or bananas on their heads for over 10 miles just to sell them for barely enough to buy salt and soap. But perhaps what hits hardest isn't the lack of food, it's the absence of infrastructure. The bare essentials we often take for granted. Historicity? In rural Burundi, fewer than 12% of households have reliable access to power. That means no refrigeration, no lights at night, and no way to power basic farming tools. Clean water? Many families still rely on muddy streams or shallow wells. Waterborne diseases are common. Diarrhea, cholera, and typhoid take more lives here than most people care to count. And during the dry season, children walk hours just to fill a single yellow jerry can. Healthcare? Picture a thatched hut with one nurse, no medicine, and no ambulance in sight. That's the nearest clinic for miles. And yet, despite it all, there is something deeply human that shines through these hills: community. In Burundi's countryside, neighbors still share what little they have. When one family lacks maize flour, another gives without asking. When illness strikes, the whole village shows up. It's not just survival, it's solidarity. Number 3, economic and infrastructure crisis. What if working an entire month couldn't even buy you a proper meal? That's not an exaggeration, that's life for millions of people in Burundi today. This small East African nation is trapped in a vicious economic storm, a mix of soaring inflation, currency collapse, and crumbling infrastructure. And while the headlines talk about inflation in rich countries like the United States or the United Kingdom, what's happening in Burundi is on an entirely different level. As of 2025, inflation in Burundi has reached over 38%, one of the highest in Sub-Saharan Africa, according to the African Development Bank. The Burundian franc, once holding some value, is now worth so little it's practically paper. Monthly wages, when there is a job, can range from $40 to $60, which sounds manageable until you realize that 1 liter of cooking oil can cost up to $8. That means a full month's pay might only buy 5 to 7 liters of oil. Meat? That's no longer a dietary staple, it's a distant luxury, served maybe once a year during weddings or funerals. But hunger is just the beginning. Let's talk about how people get to work, if they're lucky enough to have work at all. Roads in many regions are barely passable. Picture potholes the size of bathtubs, bridges made of rusted metal scraps, and entire routes washed away during rainy season floods. In the northern province of Muyinga, for instance, entire communities are cut off for weeks at a time due to impassable roads. Delivering basic goods becomes a logistical nightmare, and with it, prices skyrocket even further. Then there's transportation. Gasoline is so scarce and expensive that bicycles have become the lifeline of trade, and not just for leisure rides. We're talking about men, women, and even teenagers pedaling with hundreds of pounds of goods tied to their backs or strapped to homemade wooden carts. Some travel more than 100 kilometers per day just to earn a few coins. Their legs are the economy's last engine, grinding forward, day after punishing day. Now let's shift to energy, or the painful lack of it. Only about 12% of households in Burundi have access to any form of electricity, and power outages are so frequent that they've become part of daily routine. In rural areas, darkness descends the moment the sun sets. People cook over wood fires. Children do homework by candlelight, if they even have candles. Water? Don't count on a tap. In most regions, clean water is not a right, it's a quest. Families wake before sunrise, walking hours to reach a well or stream, then return with buckets heavy enough to bruise their shoulders. And even that water may be contaminated, risking cholera, typhoid, and other deadly diseases. But perhaps the most painful irony is this: even having a job doesn't guarantee survival. In Burundi, employment doesn't always mean income. Public servants, teachers, nurses, even police officers can go months without pay. And when they do get paid, it's often not enough to cover even the most basic food expenses. So yes, you heard that right. Some people with full-time jobs still have to beg. In Bujumbura, the capital, it's not unusual to see a construction worker eating scraps from street vendors after carrying bricks for 12 hours. Or a mother who works as a cleaner but spends her nights selling charcoal by the roadside just to afford school supplies her kids may never get to use. And yet, amid all this hardship, people push on, not because they want to, but because they have no choice. Their resilience isn't a feel-good slogan, it's survival. It's walking into tomorrow with empty pockets, sore legs, and the stubborn hope that maybe next week will be better. Number 4. Childhood lost, labor, trafficking, and a broken school system. Burundi's children aren't dreaming about becoming doctors, pilots, or engineers. They're too busy surviving. In a country where childhood should be protected, too many are being robbed of it before it even begins. Across Burundi, thousands of children are not in classrooms, they're in fields, in markets, in households not their own. They are carrying heavy buckets instead of backpacks, selling fruit instead of learning to count, and working construction jobs that would be illegal for adults in many parts of the world. The statistics are chilling. As of 2025, over 39% of Burundian children between the ages of 5 and 14 are involved in child labor, according to UNICEF. And it's not just about working early, it's about the kind of work. Hazardous, exploitative, and often invisible to the systems that are supposed to protect them. But what's even darker, some of these children vanish. Not into the shadows of poverty, but into the underground networks of human trafficking. Lured by false promises of jobs or education abroad, families desperate for a better life unknowingly hand their children over to traffickers. Some are sold for as little as $10, the price of 2 fast food meals in the West. What follows is a nightmare. Forced domestic labor, abuse, or worse, children smuggled across borders into countries like Rwanda, Uganda, and even as far as the Middle East. Their passports, if they ever had one, are confiscated, their voices silenced. Now, let's step back and ask, why is this happening? One of the biggest reasons is education, or the lack of it. Education in Burundi is not a right, it's a luxury. Although primary school is technically free, hidden costs still make it inaccessible for many families. Things like uniforms, notebooks, exam fees, even the price of lunch can be overwhelming. If a family has to choose between sending a child to school or having them work to put food on the table, the choice, sadly, becomes obvious. Imagine being 10 years old, wanting to learn but being told your dreams are too expensive. As of 2025, only about 32% of children in Burundi complete secondary school, and less than 1%, yes, 1 out of every 100, make it to university. The rest? They disappear into farms, factories, or worse, into silence. The system is broken at every level. Schools are overcrowded, underfunded, and understaffed. In many rural areas, one teacher may be responsible for teaching more than 100 students. Chalkboards are shared, books are worn down to the spine, and classrooms? Sometimes they're just trees providing shade. And here comes the heartbreak. Even when education is technically available, it's not enough. It doesn't protect children from hunger. It doesn't guarantee jobs. So families ask, what's the point of learning if there's no food to eat? But in every dark tunnel, there's a flicker of light. Local NGOs and grassroots movements are trying to build safe schools, train teachers, and educate parents about the dangers of trafficking. Some communities have introduced mobile classrooms or food for education programs. For many children, just the promise of a warm meal is enough motivation to walk miles to school. And this is what makes Burundi so complex. It's not that children don't want to learn, it's that the world has made it nearly impossible for them to do so. So the next time we talk about ambition, about potential, about children being the future, let's remember Burundi. Let's remember that there are kids out there not asking for luxury, just a pencil, a safe desk, and the freedom to learn without fear of being sold. And as we continue this journey, we'll meet some of them. Children with stories too powerful to ignore and dreams too bright to extinguish. Number 5. Bribes, fear, and the cost of daily life. In Burundi, justice doesn't live in the courtroom. It lives in whispers, in bribes, and in fear. Here, survival isn't just about food or water. It's about navigating a shadow system of corruption and power that dictates nearly every aspect of daily life. From crossing a street checkpoint to registering your child for school, there's a hidden cost, a silent tax that never shows up on paper, but drains dignity from the poor every single day. Let's start with what people here call unofficial fees. In theory, roadblocks are meant to maintain security. In reality, they've become toll booths run not by the government, but by men with guns and uniforms, sometimes police, sometimes militia. At every checkpoint, the question is the same: do you have something for us? Refuse to pay? You risk harassment, or worse, confiscation of goods, threats, or even detention without charge. These bribes aren't occasional, they are expected, routine, institutionalized. According to a 2025 report by Transparency International, over 74% of Burundians say they have paid a bribe in the past year, often just to access basic public services. But why is this happening? Part of the answer lies in the wages of public servants. The average monthly salary of a police officer or local civil servant in Burundi is around $55. That's not enough to feed a family, let alone pay rent, school fees, or transport. So what happens? Corruption becomes a survival strategy, not just for the governed, but for the governors. It's a system that traps everyone. Teachers ask for money under the table to guarantee exam passes, nurses might demand a gift before handing out medication, even birth certificates can be withheld unless the clerk gets a cut. And when corruption becomes this normal, this expected, laws lose their meaning. The legal system in Burundi is so weak that most citizens don't bother reporting abuse. Why would they? The police may be the very ones exploiting them. Courts are slow, underfunded, and often politically influenced. Justice moves not by evidence, but by who can pay the judge. The result? A kind of lawlessness wrapped in the illusion of order. People know the official rules exist, but they also know those rules rarely apply unless money or influence is involved, so they turn to street law, informal power brokers, neighborhood leaders, or even gang intermediaries. Need to get a document processed? There's a guy who knows a guy. Need protection for your shop? Pay the right group, and you'll be left alone. It's exhausting, it's unfair, but it's reality. And the worst part? For many Burundians, this is all they've ever known. Children grow up watching their parents hand over money to armed men just to pass a bridge. They see that success isn't about merit, it's about connections. They learn early that in Burundi, following the law doesn't always protect you, but knowing how to bend it might. And still, there are moments of resistance, small acts of defiance, citizens organizing quietly through church groups or community collectives to report abuse or support victims, journalists risking their lives to document corruption, whistleblowers who speak out knowing it could cost them everything. Because deep down, people don't want to live this way. They want fairness, they want transparency, they want a system where the law defends the weak, not the powerful. But until that day comes, they live by an unwritten rule: stay quiet, pay up, and survive. Number 6. Culture, faith, and the power of endurance. In Burundi, hope is not a luxury, it's a way of life. Even in the face of grinding poverty, deep political instability, and climate disasters, the heart of this country still beats with music, ritual, and a fierce will to endure. Because here, culture isn't just tradition, it's survival. Let's start with the sound that defines Burundi: the royal drums. These aren't just instruments, they're sacred symbols. For generations, the Inkirania, the lead drum, has been at the center of ceremonies marking births, harvests, funerals, and political events. The rhythms are hypnotic. When the drums echo through the hills, it's as if the whole country pauses to listen, to remember who they are. Even the United Nations has recognized Burundi's drum culture as intangible cultural heritage, a legacy too powerful to be silenced, even by hunger. and music is just the beginning. Despite the economic hardship, Burundian art, dance, and storytelling remain vibrant. Folk dances like the agasimbo and intore continue to be passed down through generations, often taught not in schools but in backyards and church halls. These performances, built on movement and unity, tell stories of love, loss, history, and pride. For a country with so little, expression becomes the greatest wealth. Now let's talk about faith, a backbone for millions. Over 80% of Burundians identify as Christian, with the majority following Catholic or Protestant traditions. But religion here isn't just doctrine, it's community, it's comfort. In a nation where few trust the government or the justice system, the church becomes the one place where people still believe they're heard. On Sundays, even in remote villages, you'll see people dressed in their best walking miles to reach a modest chapel. Inside, the air is thick with singing, prayers, and praise, not just for miracles, but for making it through the week. The church isn't just a place of worship. It's a school, a food bank, a counselor's office, and a sanctuary for the soul. But even faith must contend with forces beyond its reach. Burundi's environment is changing, and not for the better. Once known for its rolling green hills and fertile valleys, the country is now facing one of the most severe ecological crises in East Africa. Deforestation, driven by the demand for firewood and farmland, has stripped away over 40% of Burundi's forest cover in just 3 decades. The result? Floods that wash away entire harvests, landslides that bury homes, droughts that last for months. According to a 2025 report from the United Nations Environment Programme, climate change is now one of the leading drivers of food insecurity in Burundi, affecting over 3 million people. And yet, despite the chaos of nature, the erosion of soil, the unpredictability of rainfall, the human spirit here remains deeply rooted. You see it in the way neighbors gather to rebuild a fallen house, in the way children play with soccer balls made of plastic bags, in the quiet determination of women walking hours to fetch water, still sharing a smile with strangers on the road. This isn't some fairy tale of strength. This is real, raw resilience. Resilience that isn't born from comfort, but from necessity, from the understanding that no one is coming to save them, but they can still save each other. In a world that often reduces Burundi to numbers, poverty rates, malnutrition levels, aid dependency, it's easy to forget the people behind those stats, people who sing, create, believe, and rebuild again and again. Burundi may not have riches in gold or concrete, but what it holds is far more powerful: a quiet strength, a shared humanity, and an unshakable will to endure. What we've seen in this journey isn't just about poverty or statistics, it's about real people. Mothers, children, farmers, dreamers, fighting each day not just to survive, but to hold on to hope. They remind us that dignity doesn't require wealth, and that even in the harshest places, compassion still grows. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think differently, we invite you to leave a comment, share your thoughts, or simply follow along. This is NVL Travel Documentary, where every journey tells a deeper story. Thank you for watching.